Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you for those that have traveled far and near, and thank you for those that are at home or wherever you may be to join us tonight. My name is Heather. I'm an alcoholic. Brought Kleenex because I don't know what is going to be revealed. And I came prepared with literature that's been presented to me from when I walked into these rooms that was suggested that would help me stay sober. With that, I will start off with my sobriety date, which is August 29th, 2012. That is not my first sobriety date. I came in the rooms in 2007, June, July. I had started drinking when I was 15. That was my first drink. I came from California, the West Coast. I'm a middle child, and I thought maybe that could have been my problem. We have an older sister and a younger brother, and my sister was a model, the pretty one, that had long hair. That was back when like Aquanet was like the thing to do, and makeup. And I had a younger brother he had friends in the neighborhood, and I just didn't quite fit in. My friends in the neighborhood would come over to hang out with my sister, and I thought they were there to hang out with me. And it was back when we had like Cabbage Patch, and I would do, like mischievous things and hide the Cabbage Patch in the oven and just do, weird things that were kind of off the charts. And I kind of like to rebel against things. And we moved when I was 15, and I thought that was probably the reason why, because everybody in the neighborhood, we all hung out together. That was when like everybody in the neighborhood, including families and just everybody got together. They just hung out together. We cooked together. Everybody knew everybody, and that's kind of like how it was. And it's kind of like what's kind of going on right now. So when we moved, I found out that everybody in the neighborhood, minus our house, the guys and the girls all got married, including the gay guy. And I was like, what happened? Like, why did we have to move? Because we would have been next on the block. And so I thought that was our problem. Like, if we hadn't moved from California, that would have been, we would have been at a hard time. Like, I could have had the white picket fence, the perfect house, like the perfect life. And so I blamed my parents for why we had to move to North Carolina. My dad was an electrical engineer, and that was the time to move back in 1991. So we moved and didn't like North Carolina. I thought there was, no offense, a bunch of rednecks, and I was like, just didn't want to be here. And I let everybody know in high school that I did not like you. I didn't like how you dressed. I didn't like the way you talked. And I made it a point every day. And I didn't do really well in school. I did just enough to get by. And so one day I got bored. I came home from school, and I didn't have the keys to get in the house. And I was in the garage, and I opened up the fridge. And I saw my dad had a Budweiser or a Heineken, and that was what I opted to do. I got bored. I didn't have, anything to do but sit outside, and so I decided I was going to chug the Budweiser, and that's what I did. I chugged because, there was no other way to kind of delicately put a Budweiser down. So that's what I did, and that's kind of how my drinking was. I just chugged. I chugged, and then I threw up immediately, and that's pretty much how my course of drinking was anyway. And I went upstairs immediately and threw it up, and I kind of, rinsed out with mouthwash or whatever, try to cover it up. And so that was 15, 16, I kind of hung around. I got a job because my dad was like, well, get your worker's permit. You put yourself in situations, you got yourself out of it. That's kind of how my parents had instilled us. Whatever situations you got yourself in, you get yourselves out of. Parents didn't do anything wrong. I had a good, upbringing. It wasn't anything that they were absent to. They didn't kind of like leave us to do anything, and they didn't leave us unsupervised. They knew where we were. The lights, the street lights came on. They knew where their kids were. It was kind of like when you saw the stuff on the news, like it's 8:00 at night. Do you know where your kids are? Like that kind of stuff came on. And so there was like, the specials that came on, and we would sat and ate dinner together. We had breakfast together. My dad worked. He went to school. My mom, when she worked, she took us with her. There was people in the neighborhood that if they weren't home, we would stay at somebody's house. So there was definitely supervision. It wasn't like we were left alone, unattended, and that we had free time to just not be supervised, with the exception of that 15-year-old incident. So the leading up to, I started working, And when I started working, I would start hanging out and seeing things that I wanted to get more experimental with or get exposure to. And I saw older kids. And I worked in an indoor amusement park. It was in Cary. That's where I'm from now, or in that area my parents are. And it was an indoor amusement park, and you got to stay up late, and there was a jukebox, and there was an indoor roller coaster, there was laser tag, and it was like, this is great, we get to work now, and I feel like I'm responsible, and it was my money, and I was going to do what I wanted with my money, and my dad couldn't tell me that I could no longer buy hairspray and candy with my money, that I was going to be paying for things. Well, with that job also came more responsibility, and that meant if you're going to stay here, you're going to be paying for bills, and you're going to be paying for toiletry and your expenses. And I thought that was kind of ridiculous. I'm like, how dare you? Like, I'm living underneath your roof. Like, I have a job. Like, this is my money. And that wasn't the case. My parents were like, you need to start paying us for the things that you're utilizing, and this is our house, and these are our rules. And if you don't like it, there's the door. So, 18, I said, well, by the time I'm 18, I'm getting out of this house, and you can't tell me what to do, and I'm going to go back to California, and I'm going to get married because that's what was supposed to happen. And my parents just kind of laughed. And my sister thought the same kind of thing, and my mom thought the same thing, that it was all my dad's fault. So there was this, animosity towards, my dad because it was all his fault, and there was this, sexist kind of thing in the house. And I had some of that kind of growing up, and I had a lot of anger towards why my brother was the youngest, the baby. He had a lot of slack. He didn't get as much growing up. And so there was also some, eating disorders, some other things that it was trying to fit up to the mold of what you see on TV and magazines, and trying to cover up everything on the outside. If I could just get everything on the outside to look good, then everything on the inside didn't matter. It didn't matter if I hated myself. It didn't matter if I hated you. I wanted everybody to feel what I was feeling on the inside, so I tried to match up everything on the outside. And when I was introduced to alcohol at one of these parties, that it was like, okay, like this is good. Like, I can do this. And then guys kind of came into the picture, and my self-esteem went down. And then it didn't really matter about like the consequences of things. Now, to say that, I hear like a lot of times in the rooms, people get arrested, they had jail, they had all these things. Like, those things didn't happen, but the inside, when I hear about like the insecurities, the demoralization, like a lot of those things, I felt just so dark and so empty that it was like, how can I possibly get out of this? And I'm like, I'm not done. Like, I just wanted to consume so much alcohol and so much outside stuff that it was like, there's no turning back. And so I just kept going. And when I turned 20, my dad said, okay, you're not in high school anymore. You're not working. Like, you need to do something. So I had joined the military. That seemed like a good idea because the recruiting officer came to my parents' house and was like, we can get her, the MGI Bill or whatever it was. And I'm like, okay, fine, I can leave. I can get college. I can do all this stuff. I'll be away from my parents, and I can finally just make my own rules. And that wasn't the case either. I had somebody else telling me what to do and when to do it and what time to do it. And then I was on suicide watch, and I had finally got out of that. I had somebody help me get out of that because a lot of people frowned on me at Fort Jackson, and to have people in the military not like you and have a warden come at you, and the people in the barracks frown upon you, and then have to go up and down the steps to take your mattress up and down, and to be cleaning floors at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever time they say that you need to do stuff, and then have your food, the same food day in, day out, was just ridiculous to me. And I smell saran wrap. The smell of saran wrap still cringes me because that's the food that they wrapped your food with saran wrap, and I smelled that every day. And so I was like, the military is not cutting it out for me. And then you can't drink. So I was like, I got to get out of here. Like, my skin is crawling. So I got out, and then it was like, okay, I can go back to alcohol. And so I got out, and immediately it was like, I can go back and find alcohol. That was like my go-to. And it kind of, like they say, it picked up where it left off. And it picked up where it left off, and my low self-esteem got even lower. And it didn't matter. Like, I didn't care about myself. I didn't care about you. And I was just I don't even know if it was like dying. I don't even know if my soul hadn't even been alive. I don't even know how horrific to even explain it. So coming back, 20, like I said, my grandparents had outed me. They wouldn't speak to me. My parents wouldn't speak to me. They pretty much kind of like disowned me. You got to do something with your life. You got to be productive. You got to go. So my sister and I, she was still living at the house, and they said, you got to go. So we left. I had all my stuff ready because that's fine, I'll move. And so I did. And we moved into an apartment in Morrisville, got our own place. And that's what I could drink like I wanted to. And I kept a cup of noodles and Slim Fast, and that's what I lived off of. And as long as I could drink, then it didn't matter. And I could pay my portion of the bills. As long as that money kind of was set aside, the rest of it was set aside for drinking. And then you can meet guys, and then if I came with like $5, I could like, hey, could you spot me here? Hey, I'll dance for you here. Hey, and then I'd come home with more money than I left with. And I was like, hey, I got it, this is kind of cool. And then my sister kind of got really upset when her white cream carpet and stuff was not being taken care of the way she wanted to. So there was some friction going on there at the house. So the family was starting to be affected as far as like what I thought was just being affected by me and my drinking was not just me and my drinking. I was starting to affect other people, but I still didn't care because I still wanted alcohol. I still wanted to figure out how I could get the pain to go away, and the pain wasn't going away. And the more I was consuming, the worse it was getting. And I left job after job, and then I was working 3 jobs just to kind of make ends meet. And then, tax time comes around, and it was like I'm having to pay in the government because I didn't make enough, and how is this working out? I just felt like I just kept falling under, and I'm like, I just can't get out from under this. And so I met a guy. My grandmother had passed away. My dad had a heart attack, and my brother was in the hospital. And I can't tell you how many times I had been in and out of the hospital and in and out of the hospital. And I started collecting bracelets from the hospital and collecting hospital gowns. Like, people like collect shot glasses, and I thought that it was like they were my trophies. And, look what I've accomplished, this is great. And I'm not I'm collecting collection agencies bills and stuff, and I'm not paying them. And my mail is not getting collected because I just don't have, I can't make it out during the sun. I'm only coming out at night. And the apartments that I'm living are sending me notifications like, don't come out to get your mail. It's not safe in this neighborhood. Make sure you take somebody with you. The neighborhoods were just not safe. But I was getting to the point where I would wake up and I thought, well, maybe if I just look at myself while I'm drinking, that will scare me enough to see like how much I'm drinking. So I would like look at myself while I'm drinking to see like if I just face myself while I'm drinking, that will stop me. And it was like, no, it wouldn't. Like I had mirrors to like, no, and I would hide stuff all over the place. I had my path laid out from my bedroom to the bathroom, so that way I could make sure that I could make it in time before I got sick. I'd make sure I take off my sharp objects, my hoop earrings, and all that stuff so I wouldn't injure myself in the middle of the night. And the boyfriend, one of the last boyfriends, we got physically violent with each other because it was no longer, just fun and nice. People were getting black eyes. People were getting hurt. And like I said, I was never arrested. Nobody ever pressed charges, knock on wood. And there was finally, I had taken Long Island iced tea and my medication. And I couldn't remember if I had taken my medication, if I took it or I didn't take it. So finally, by the time I got done, looked and the medication was gone and the liquor was gone. And I'm like, I was so gone. And I had passed out and there was a knock on the door and didn't know what time it was. And the boyfriend answers the door, and he's like, I'm calling 911 or I'm calling your parents. And I was like, don't call 911. I know the routine. Just let me sleep it off. I'll be fine. And he's like, no, I'm calling 911. So I said, like, my grandmother had passed. My dad's, got a heart attack. My brother's, not doing well. And so I go to the hospital. And that was the first time that somebody actually handed me some papers. And they sent me some stuff as far as like, this is how you can get treatment. And I was like, okay, not really sure if I want to go that course yet. And so I decided, well, how much is it going to cost? Because that was the thing, like, this is going to cost me something, and I don't really want to go that route because I don't want to take my money and pay to do something that I don't know anything about. So I thought, well, let's just call up and find out what it's all about. So I called up and figured out that there's an assessment that they're going to do at First Step in Raleigh. And I did. I called up and I went there and I sat down and talked with them, and I told them, like, hey, was with this cocaine dealer, and he beat the crap out of me. I've got domestic charges and all this other stuff that's going on. And, there's other stuff associated with all the drama that goes along with us, with drunks and all that stuff. So I'm not giving you all the baggage, but just enough to let you know and qualify as far as being an alcoholic, that it's uncontrollable and that my life was miserable and it was a black, dark hole. And so when I sat down and I told him everything, and it was like, okay, well, you can go through intense outpatient treatment, and it's going to cost you X amount of dollars. And I'm like, okay, thank you for your time. And I went to get up, and I don't know why, it still to this day gives me chills, because there was a force stronger than me that, and I know now that it's God, put me back in that chair. And it was like, if you walk out these doors, you are never going to make it. You are going to die. And so I sat back down and I was like, okay, what do I do? And so I sat back down and it was like, these are the papers. This is the stuff that you fill out. This is what you do. And I was like, okay. And so we did. We just sat through the classes, did the stuff. And it was like, okay. And I heard people say, like, I'm an alcoholic. And I'm like, I'm not saying that. I will not say that. And so, I had said it when I was out drinking. I was like, yeah, I'm an alcoholic, woohoo, and I said it jokingly, but I would not say it to myself that I am an alcoholic. And so I'd come into meetings and I had like all my papers, my notebooks and stuff, because I'm like, I am like analyzing you people, like I am writing a paper or something, because I want to figure out what you're going to say, and I want to find the loopholes, and I'm going to take this stuff home and I'm going to investigate it, because there's something that I'm just not buying. Like I'm like forensics, or like, I'm going to break this down and I'm going to try to figure this out on my own, away from you people, and then I don't have to come back. And somebody came up to me, and she was half my age, and she was pregnant, or she had 10 years off of me. And she was like, do you have a sponsor? And I was like, and immediately I'm thinking Nike, or, Titleist, or, like some kind of, like, I really just, I had no clue. Like, really, like, I think I'm fairly intelligent, like I did graduate from high school. I do have some, college experience, but I just did not have any idea. And so I'm like, no. And she's like, just have coffee with me. And I'm like, okay, call me tomorrow. And I'm like, okay. And some other women had given me their numbers, and there was another woman that said, don't call me, nobody else does. And I was like, okay. So now I got a sponsor, and now I got somebody that's telling me, don't call me, nobody else does. So I'm like, I'm going to meet this lady for coffee, and I'm going to call that woman that told me not to call her. So I called the woman. She was like, hello? And she's like, I can't believe you called me. I can't believe that worked. And I was like, yeah, well, you tell me not to do something, I'm going to do the opposite. So, that worked. So we talked for a little bit, and I met up with my sponsor. Her and I worked together for like 5 years, but the whole like breaking down, the step one, as far as like admitting we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Like, I didn't want to admit that I was powerless. Like, I was powerful. Like, I felt like on top of the world when I had alcohol. Like, I felt like I could conquer everybody. But then when I came into the rooms, it was just like, get away from me. I need your help. Get away from me. I need your help. Like, I'm dying inside. Like, I had closed fists. I used to come in with a ball cap, like 10 like layers of makeup. Like, don't see who I really am. And I had slippers, because I was like, I was going to escape and I was going to go back to bed. Like, I'm serious. Like, people used to laugh at me, like, where's your slippers now? And I'm like, oh, I don't need them. Like, I can come now as a person, or I can come without my makeup. I am okay with who I am, the way God made me. And the part that my sponsor pointed out is there's two parts, that your life is become unmanageable. And I had to write down a list of the unmanageability, that you can't go out to get the mail, that you can't look at people in the face, that you can't have a, connection with another human being. Like, all those things had to be listed out for me in order to see the unmanageability. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, of sound mind. Like, came to believe, and I'm like, I don't want to believe that a power greater than myself. But she didn't say God. So I was like, okay, I can kind of go there, because I've been hearing it in the rooms talking about God and talking about creator. And I'm like, okay, she's just saying power greater. Do you believe that something bigger out there, that it's not you, that can help you? And I'm like, okay. Do you believe that I believe? And I'm like, I believe that you believe. Sure. Okay. Just you and me doing this. And I'm like, just you and me. Okay. Forget everybody else. Just you and me are doing this. And I'm like, okay. All right. That's solid. I can handle that. And made a decision to turn our will and our life. Now that's starting to get scary, because I'm now having to have to make a decision. Now I'm having to commit to doing something. And I'm like, I'm not willing. Okay. Now I'm like, I'm not willing. But I've already admitted that I was powerless over alcohol and that it's unmanageable. So I'm already gone 2 steps into this. So I'm like, okay, just making a decision, just saying yes or no. Okay, and that my life, and turn it over to the care of God as we understood him. So that took some time to get through that process as far as understanding him. So we worked through that. It took a period of time to get through that part. And then making a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. I had to see and get down to who I was, where I was at fault, what made me, because when I came in here and when I picked up that drink, I was 15 years old. That's when I stopped growing. That's when I stopped maturing. That's when I stopped God from coming into my life and enabling me to grow. So I'm 15 years old coming into this room at 31 years old. So I've got 16 years of trying to figure out where am I supposed to be. So even though I'm in this grown body, I got to try to figure out, and not on my own, with somebody helping me with this. So that took some time to write all that stuff out. And I think about it now, if I had known that 4th step was going to come back and get me in 8 and 9, I don't think it would have been as long. And I've said that, it would have been 2 people. Nonetheless, I'm glad that it was what it was and it got me where I am, because I wouldn't be standing here, talking about it. So it took what it took. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. So I'm glad that I was able to admit to God once I was able to make that decision, and to myself, and to have somebody in my life that I was, 1, able to build a bond with, 1, able to call up in the middle of the night when I was stuck, feeling stuff, thinking about things that I didn't think were big enough. It was small. I burnt something on the stove. It's probably small. It's probably trivial. Those things will come out sideways. Those things will come out on my kids. Those things will come out on my fiance. Those things will come out at my job. Those things that I think are no big deal, those things will come out and they'll boil over. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. You're good. And just asking humbly, whether it be on my knees, just saying I am not God, you are. Please just help me. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Some of them were just yes, right away, get them off the plate. Some of them were financial. Some of it was just, what am I willing to do to protect my sobriety today? And that's got to be concrete for me. And made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. If I walk into somebody's life, am I going to be harming them? Or do I need to stay away, talk to my sponsor, and find out what I can do to make that amends, whether it's livable, whether it's doing some service in another capacity, and then continue to take, 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. That is continuous for me, and I continue to do that with my sponsor. I do have a sponsor. And I did go through a period where I did not have a sponsor, and I can tell you, I've gone through different periods in my sobriety where I did not have a sponsor. I have been dry, and I can tell you those have been very painful. And it was through last year, I was at a spiritual retreat. And I only say this because we go through all the steps. And I was at the retreat with one of my best friends. And I was like, I just don't have a sponsor. And somebody had said, having a bad sponsor is better than no sponsor. And I was like, what is that crap supposed to mean? And it got me thinking. I was like, well, I don't have a sponsor. Having a bad sponsor is better than no sponsor. And it kept playing in my head and kept playing in my head and kept playing in my head. And I'm like, well, there's obviously some truth to it. Because obviously if it keeps playing in my head, there's got to be something that I need to do. And I remember when my sponsor would say things to me and they upset me or they kept playing in my head, I'm like, there's some work that needs to be done. So when I thought about that, and I say that with prayer and meditation, I mean that because I constantly talk to God, like I need to pray about this and find out where my path is with a sponsor. And I remember being so angry before I went to that spiritual retreat. And I had been sober for like 6-7 years at that point. And I say that because this was last year, that doesn't matter how much time of sobriety, I was in pain just being without a sponsor for a couple months and not working the program, or at least to the best of my ability. And I had gone on a walk and I was talking with God, like in my head, just like, where do you want me to be? Where do I need to be? And I was like, I'm just going to stop talking. Please help me. And it was like, I could hear him just being like, just be quiet. I'll help you. And it was just like crying, like the last like stretch of that walk. And I was like, please don't bring me back the same woman that I was. I don't want to come back the same woman. I was so angry. I've never been so angry in sobriety. 6 years sober. I'd been going to home group. I had a service position, but I didn't have a sponsor, and it had only been for 2 months. And I'm like, I feel like going like, what's wrong with me? And so I came back and I talked with my friend, and she was like, I'm giving you a week. Get a sponsor. And so I'm like, okay. So I went back to my home group and I was like, okay, God, just show me whatever it is that I need to see. And so I went up to this woman and I was like, I don't know where my path is. I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to see, but I'm going through life right now. Life, that other 4-letter word. And if you'd be willing, I'm asking you to step into my life and be my sponsor because I need help. And she was like, I'd be honored. And she's been walking through life with me, with prayer and meditation to help improve my conscious contact with him. And I don't know everything. She doesn't know everything. But God is helping build this relationship. And so that being said, blah, blah, blah. Having had a spiritual awakening with working all these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs, not just here in the rooms, not just at work, not just with the neighbor, but I try like with the mail carrier, with opening the door. Like I have constant reminders for me. I pretend like when I'm struggling, it's like that fight or flight mode. I pretend like my kids. I go outside and I'm like, okay, God. I grab his hand and I'm like loosen the grip. I'm like, okay. I grab God and I'm like, okay, just guide me. I have reminders in my car. I don't have a passenger, so I buckle him in my seat. My kids saw that and they're like, how come you get God in the front seat? And I'm like, well, I mean, you guys can have him because I've got one over here and one over here. So they buckle the middle seat. So God sits in the back seat. So we have, God with us to implement in different ways. So when I see that, I'm like, God rode, with me on the way over here. And so it's just constant to see, like, it's not just me, God's with me. I imagine sometimes like I need visualizations for when I don't want to let things go. I told somebody early in sobriety, there's some things that I want to hold on to. And I'm like, I'm not willing to let this one go. And some strings are long. I have balloons, like I visualize like a balloon of something that I just don't want to let go. And anger or whatever it is, a situation. And I put whatever it is on a balloon. Again, this is just in my mind. And some of it's a short string and God can have it. And some of them are really long strings. And I'm like, here you go, God, I'm giving this to you. And then I like get to pull it back. And so those are things that are like my defects that I just don't want to let go of. And I have gratitude lists that I have, that I write daily, that I trust in you, God, and that improve character, that I need to constantly work on improving my character. That I need to work on me. And the other thing that was important to me that was told is that am I willing to go to any length to protect my sobriety? And there were some things that had happened in the end of December leading up to where we are now. And that was, Christmas time is rolling around. I had been working at my job as a medical biller, and I had been working from home and had the opportunity to be able to work from home. And we had been through several different CEOs and several different human resources and constantly revolving door through the line of work. And I finally got a notice that said, we're not having, remote users anymore, that you're going to need to come into the office. And I said, is there any wiggle room? Like I have a 3-year-old that's at home and I have a 6-year-old that I go to pick up from school, and there's just, the routine is just working out really great. And my fiance, he works at a mobile home store and he's the manager there, and like, this is just going to like rock our world. Like this isn't happening. And I had been praying about it and talking to my employer about it. And she said, look, I'll give you a month and that's it. And so I'm like, okay, I'm grateful for the month. And then I waited and then I thought, should I just let this go? Should I just, who knows, let's just see what happens. And I thought, no, I need to own it. Like the whole I am responsible, like kind of thing. Like I need to like take responsibility for like what's going to take place. And so we'd gone through some preparations and I talked to my fiance and I was like, I'm going to be without a job because I am not willing to sacrifice my family. And I have been praying about it. And I think this is the right path that I need to be. I don't know what your thoughts are. And he said, put your notice in, take care of the family. I think homeschooling. And I'm like, homeschooling? Are you kidding me? Like, I'm not homeschool material. Like, I am at the house with the kids. Like, no. 3 and 6-year-old boys. Like, I love them. I absolutely love them. And I'm so grateful. They're blessings. And I had not to mention 50-50 chance of being able to even have them. So that being said, then I go back to ungrateful, and then I need to be grateful. So I falter between where I need to be in my life. And so I was like, okay. And so finally they were like, that's it. And, some other things had taken place. January 27th at 7:22 in the morning, my kids, when I went to wake up, had been waking up earlier and earlier. They decided that they wanted to go on their own field trip, and we live on a highway. And so right before, like I said, this is right after Christmas, I'm losing my job. My kids went on a field trip on the highway by themselves. So when I woke up in the morning, my kids were gone. And I was like, my fiance was like, they're here in their house. And I'm like, they're gone. And I mean, I felt it. And I was just like, my kids are gone. And I looked at my fiance. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm calling the cops. And I was like, they've got to be okay. They've got to be okay. And he's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm like in the middle of talking with God, and I'm talking with the police, and she's like, just breathe. And I'm like, I'm trying to breathe. She's like, what were they wearing? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what they were wearing. I'm looking, and I was like, one's got Spider-Man shoes, one's got blue Nike shoes. I don't know what they're wearing. And 30 minutes later, those kids were home. But at no point did a drink enter my mind. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful that those kids came home. I'm so blessed that those kids came home. And I get so angry with those kids sometimes. So we got our kids back, lost the job, gave the job, however, and I've been fortunate enough to have someone that was at the same job, and she had a 1-year-old son, and I told her, I said, you know what, I'm thinking about this, and I was like, how about I watch your 1-year-old with my 3-year-old, and that way it'll offset the cost of you putting him into daycare. Run it by your husband and see what your thoughts are. So I was like, I don't know, like this stuff is just like, God's going, hey, look, you got to look for an opportunity. When something bad happens, try to look for an opportunity. And I'm like, okay, just keep like problem solving. Like there's a problem. What's the solution? And if there's a problem, like I just like our home group, there's a solution. I think like all the time, there's a solution. God's giving you a problem. Yes, but he's offering you change and a challenge to like grow from this. So I'm like, okay. So let's grow from this. It's painful, but I'm going to grow from this. I know you want me to grow from this, and I know it's going to be better on the outside, on the other side of this. So I'm like, all right. So we do that. I leave the job, and I'm working with this woman and her son, and things are good. And then I come home one day, and my fiance's like, lock the door. I was like, what's going on? He said, I don't know where the guy is. And I said, what's going on? He said, I just got rear-ended and the guy pulled a gun on me. And I'm like, I was like, okay, God, you're hilarious. That's enough. I said, honey, by the way, the sink's overflowing and it won't stop. I said, but we're going to get through this, right? And so he said, yes, so the sink got fixed, the kids are back, my job's gone, COVID-19 shows up, and I was like, yeah, winner, winner, chicken dinner, right? So we're like, but we're all going through this. I'm not alone. We're not alone. And I'm like, okay. And so guess what? I'm homeschooling. What I was so opposed to doing. And I'm like, okay. This is just a different disguise of where you want me to be and what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm like, okay. And the thought is, I'm not drinking. I'm going to suit up. I'm going to show up. I'm not going to pick up a drink, and I'm going to keep going. So where do you want me to be? And it's like opportunities. They're not like things that are going to knock me down. They're not things that haven't been seen or said or done before. Like, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep showing up. And that's what's been shown to me before. That's what was like when I first walked into these doors. I've heard and seen so many people go through so many trials and tribulations of their life. And I'm like, I'm going to keep going. My arm falls off. Whatever. I put that in a bag, like that'll come with me, or, whatever, like wheel me in here, or whatever it is. Like, I'll come to protect my sobriety. And, there's just so many things. Like, I talk about, like, when I come to my home group, and it was like, whatever it takes, that's what I want to do to protect my sobriety. And I try to leave my opinions on the outside. Sometimes I have like a little sass that comes with me. I have my opinions, and I was thinking about, there's somebody that came with me, and I was just about to lose it with my kids the other day. And I start looking at like these sarcastic, funny shirts I wear to my home groups and stuff. And I saw this one, and I like got my kids watching TV, and I saw one that looked like this, God hand, Jesus hand with a little butterfly on it, and it said, "There it goes, my last flying," and I was like, that's what I need. And then I was like, you know what? I need to call somebody. Because if I'm thinking these things right now, I am not in the God frame. I'm not getting spiritual. I'm not in the right frame of mind. And I was like, I need to go. And so I closed off the computer because I was like, it's going to come out sideways. I know me. And I called Nancy. And I was sitting here just like flicking my pen. And she was like, you know what I just got done doing? I just got done going on this nice, peaceful walk with God and nature. And it was so serene. And I was like, oh, so serene. And I was like, she's like, you have to just let go and let God. And I went like this, and I looked at my pen, and it says, let go and let God. And I was like, okay, I'm not buying the shirt. I gotcha. Like, I just needed to let go and let God. And it was like, thank you for putting me right back where I needed to be. And it was just like, so those are the things that happen in my life, and not to take myself so seriously. That's what I think. Like, I do take my alcoholism seriously, but I don't take myself so seriously that I can't have fun and enjoy life. And there's a few things that I'd like to read, and then I will be done. So with that, I get a lot out of how it works, the big book. I get a lot out of the 12 and 12, and I also get a lot out of daily reflections. As Bill sees it, there's so much literature, so many things that I find so profound when I'm in desperate need that I can look up something that I'm feeling and I can find it. And I found these in the daily reflections. One is from page 271, one is from page 192, and one is from page 276. And I'll read them in that order. One is acceptance. We admitted we couldn't lick alcohol with our own remaining resources, and so we accepted the further fact that dependence upon a higher power, if only our AA group could do this hitherto impossible job. The moment we were able to accept these facts fully, our release from the alcohol compulsion had begun. That's from As Bill Sees It, page 109. Freedom came to me only with my acceptance that I could turn my will and my life over to the care of my higher power, whom I call God. Serenity seeped into the chaos of my life when I accepted that what I was going through was life, and that God would help me through my difficulties, and much more as well. Since then, He has helped me through all of my difficulties. When I accept situations as they are, not as I wish them to be, then I can begin to grow and have serenity and peace of mind. This is the page 192, the heart of true sobriety. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. Alcoholics Anonymous, page 568. Am I honest enough to accept myself as I am and let this be the me that I let others see? Do I have the willingness to go to any length, to do whatever is necessary to stay sober? Do I have the open-mindedness to hear what I have to hear, to think what I have to think, and to feel what I have to feel? If my answer to these questions is yes, I know enough about the spirituality of the program to stay sober. As I continue to work the 12 steps, I move on to the heart of true sobriety. Serenity with myself, with others, and with God as I understand Him. And finally, vigilance, on page 276. We have seen the truth demonstrated again and again. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Commencing to drink after a period of sobriety, we are